This is Chattanooga Civics. I'm Nathan Bird. It is unfortunately common for people to feel alienated from their government, to feel as though the problems they experience in their neighborhoods are not the problems that officials are talking about at City Hall. This feeling of alienation can lead to a lack of engagement, which can lead to a further feeling of alienation, and on in a vicious cycle. The City of Chattanooga Department of Neighborhood Services is one way the city is working to break that cycle. In this episode, we'll learn more about the Neighborhood Services Department and how they are working to better reconnect citizens with our government.
So I'm Lisa Thompson. I'm the Neighborhood Services Manager for the City of Chattanooga.
Awesome. So what is Neighborhood Services? What encompasses all of Neighborhood Services?
So Neighborhood Services is a function of Mayor Kelly's administration. We're in the Office of Community Development. So in prior administrations, you had an Office of Economic and Community Development that kind of worked in tandem with one another. Mayor Kelly and his team have decided they want to split those functions. So there's an economic development office. They're doing economic development, initiatives, recruiting businesses. And community development is focusing on literally the development of the community. So how we play into that neighborhood services is we work directly with neighborhood associations, and we'll talk about neighborhood associations and citizens, connecting citizens with City Hall, but also feeding City Hall data and details on what specifically citizens in Chattanooga are concerned about. So as Mayor Kelly and his staff are thinking about their One Chattanooga plan, for example, and City Council's thinking about budget initiatives and how to spend capital dollars, we're doing that in a more thoughtful approach because we're actually listening to what citizens and neighbors are telling us they need. So we're almost like a liaison team, if you will.
So what are the primary ways that you fulfill that function in terms of how do you gather that information?
Yeah. So we work primarily with our neighborhood associations. So our neighborhood associations are established organizations within the city based on neighborhoods. So it may be based on a zip code, but it's more historical neighborhoods like Stewart Heights, Eastdale, East Lake, the small kind of pocket communities of Chattanooga is the way I kind of think of them. I'm from Nashville, and that's kind of Nashville's that same kind of model. And so we actually go in, so we have neighborhood relations specialists in my team, and they're assigned to a council district. So we divide the council districts up evenly. So each person has a number of council districts, and they'll work within those geographical areas with their established neighborhood associations, being like a technical support. So we don't always go to the meeting, but if someone calls and says we need a speaker or we are defunct, we need to get reorganized. Obviously during COVID, they needed to know how to meet virtually or in a safe space. Now they want to continue meeting in a safe space just because nobody wants to re-engage in kind of a public format. So that's kind of what our core functionality is working within the neighborhood associations, doing our work within those groups. We've expanded it just because Mayor Kelly has allowed us to kind of reformulate our office. And what we're doing there is instead of going, you and I know it's so hard to get somebody to come to a meeting. So what one of our staff members came up with was a walk and talk. So we're going within our neighborhood associations and our council districts. We go and do a walk and talk where that's literally what it sounds like. We go out an established route. It's usually 1 to 2 blocks just to keep it, accessible and low key. And we walk the neighborhood with the council person, with the neighborhood association leaders, stakeholders. We've had the chief of police come, public works has come. We've had, people just show up and say, I heard about this and I want to show you something on this blog. And what we're doing, I know this is a podcast, so I'm going to point to stuff and you're going to tell me this is not on video, but we're trying to transform passion into action. So what I mean by that is In my neighborhood, there's a pothole that drives me crazy every time I see it. I want to just go fill it, right? I'm a city planner. I can fill a pothole. But if I'm just a nice grandmotherly lady who sees that pothole and says, that's a safety, who do I contact? Then in these walk and talks, we're connecting that person with the public works director or the associate of public works who says, okay, tomorrow we'll have a crew out here and that pothole is fixed. So we're transforming a lot of passion into action. And we're also just making a lot of, I would think, things that have been just really troubling people about their neighborhoods. We're actually fixing things. And then we're feeding that data back into City Hall to say, hey, we need money to finance these projects. Budgets are coming due in October. So we're feeding into the every council person's district, what we want them to think about when they're thinking about what they're going to petition capital dollars for, because every neighborhood is different. Common things are sidewalks, potholes, streets need to be paved. We have crime. We have children in the streets that just literally need somewhere to go. So in our new kind of community development office, all our community centers are under us now.
Okay.
So we're having our meetings in our community centers, and we're engaging in that level of where do people go just to have a safe space. I like to swim. I had no idea that we have 2 community centers where you can walk in and swim. Indoor pools, beautiful indoor pools. I thought, my gosh, I got to go swim in the river. But those are things just that we're doing here that it's really unique work, and I love it. But it's hard work too.
So I want to kind of address these. This is all very exciting. Yeah. I want to address these in kind of reverse order and start with the community centers. Yeah. So I was looking through some of the boards and commissions that the city has, and there are new community center boards for each district.
Right.
Is that under your office or coordinating with your office? How does that fit in?
Probably when we say my office, neighborhood services, probably not through my office, but through our community development administrator. Okay. He is over all our community centers. They are formulating new boards because we are built. So we recently built Avondale Community Center. We'll have East Lake Community Center, brand new community center probably by the end of the year, hopefully, just depending on construction. And then they're looking at all the community centers to see which ones need to be either built completely brand new or upgraded, and how they're going to spend some capital dollars. So that would probably be like Chris Brown or Tony Salmons to talk to about community centers and the boards and the leadership.
Got it.
Yeah.
And so then the walk and talks, it's a really great idea because I feel like people get very frustrated. They put something into 311 and it disappears into cyberspace. And sometimes it gets lost. Sometimes people forget, all sorts of things happen. But to the average citizen, just putting it into 311, it's just like, poof, it's gone. And I never hear anything ever again.
I agree.
But
and
having a place to meet someone and look them in the eye and say, here's where I'm having issues in my neighborhood is very important.
Right. And let's be very honest. 311 is great. It has some great functionality, but there's some opportunities for improvements there as well. So in our last walk and talk, for example, we were in East Lake. We walked 3 blocks. And as we were walking, I'm walking with the councilwoman, and I'm identifying these are 311 actionable items. And I pull out my cell phone as I'm walking, and I'm like plugging in 311 tickets. And I'm plugging in potholes, litter pickup, whatever it was. There was just a list. I mean, I sat there for like an hour. I'm a prolific 311 user. They probably don't like me very much. But those are actionable items that you could drive down the road and say, oh, I see this huge pothole, and pull up 311 on the app and fill that in. And that hopefully is getting routed to appropriate personnel. Whole nother podcast about who that goes to and what it does. But with the walk and talk, I had never been to East Lake. Beautiful, lovely little kind of pocket neighborhood. But we saw a huge, I'm a city planner, and it was like the city planning 101 textbook was just coming to life underneath my feet, where I would see, nice, 1 bedroom, little, kind of apartments, and then there would be nice, 2-3 bedroom home, and then you go around the corner, and the neighborhood just took a dive, and it was like, what's happening here? That now it's a dive, and we're talking about like crime. It was just you don't have to be an expert in it. It was like, what's happening to this home and the people living in it, and we very respectfully stayed within our boundaries of we're just there to observe. But then as we walk around, we see children who came out to talk to us, and they express they don't feel safe to go out in the street. And, I don't know, I might have ridden bicycles in our streets where we grew up, or we played basketball on the street. You didn't see any of that activity that you would expect to see. It was 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We saw kids getting off the school bus, and you would expect them to maybe go in and come back out and play. And I'm like, what's happening? Is it us? We're a unique animal out here, right? It's almost like we're having a little parade. But it was pretty obvious that people were nervous about us being out there. But we also saw our codes team. So within community development, our codes inspectors, we saw they must have been out there earlier in the day, and it flagged some litter that needed to be picked up. And you'll see that now they're using a yellow tag. Mm-hmm. So it's like a strip. So they'll, like if you've left your limbs in the wrong place, it's tied to the limbs, and it's a strip, and you might be cited to municipal court. That's an extreme situation. But we saw evidence that our codes team had been out there that mm-hmm. day working, doing codes inspections. So it was like everything was working, and we were seeing it. The police were with us, making sure that we were safe. It was pouring rain. We still walked. We have umbrellas, and it's just all hands on deck, whatever the situation is. And that was our second one that we've mm-hmm. done. Our first one was a little bit more just a nice stroll through a neighborhood. Our third one, who knows? Like we're not trying to predict what happens. We want to see the neighborhood functioning as it is, mm-hmm. so then we can again report back to people. I will say one thing that's come out of both of those sessions, and probably our third one, is the city needs a sidewalk plan. We need to know who's paying for sidewalks, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you and I are kind of in different roles in the development world, but who's building sidewalks? Who's paying for them? And what do we do with our existing ones that are literally falling apart? Yeah. We had our first walk and talk. We had a staff member step off a broken sidewalk and almost sprained her ankle. The chief of police was there, almost stepped off the same broken sidewalk into the street. Like a broken sidewalk that nobody is going to do anything about. That's a problem that we need to be fixing. Mm-hmm. And that's something that Public Works and I will be talking about.
So how do people find out about the walk and talk schedule, and how they can get involved and be part of that?
Yeah. So it's in each council district. So we in our team, we market through a couple of different resources. Right now we're pretty prolific on Nextdoor. We also do market on Facebook. We do radio spots. Our public relations officer does media throwouts to the news organizations. Neighborhood Services has an internal calendar where you can go on there and find all of our events. So whether it's a walk and talk, or a neighborhood association, a neighborhood roundtable meeting, we're trying to, obviously, right, we've talked earlier about the city website is in the process of being updated. It's probably not where I would probably reliably send people for information, but hopefully as that gets updated, there'll be an internal calendar that you can go and click on there and see and then what we're hoping is through our established neighborhood associations and their list, mm-hmm. that we're giving them information, hoping they're passing it on to the people that might be interested. Mm-hmm. And it's working really, really well right now. And we want to kind of keep it manageable because we're walking 2 or 3 city blocks, and we have to have a safety plan. We have to have a police officer with us, and we have to all stay congregated. Mm-hmm. So if we get it too large of a group, the effectiveness of it's probably going to not be as I don't know. That's a variable we'll have to look at.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as finding out where we are, I think the best way is probably next door or just to call us and get on our listserv so that we can send marketing blast out to you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And you mentioned neighborhood associations. I want to get into that
Yeah.
and probably spend a good amount of time talking about this. So just to preface for our listeners, I'm heavily involved in the St. Elmo Neighborhood Association. I joined the board about a year ago, and I've found it to be just one of the best ways to get involved in a real way with the way the city functions. I don't even say city government at that level,
No.
but civic engagement. I mean, just having that platform to get people to come together, share a space, share their concerns, and then have somebody whose job it is to run it up the chain. Have an organization that just says, okay, here's neighbor A, B, and C. They all have these problems. You send it to the neighborhood association board, who then sends it to, whatever connections they have built with the city, whether it's the city council person or the public works department. And I've learned so much from monthly meetings. I have made a lot of connections through those monthly meetings. Our councilwoman, Ricketta Dotley, is just fantastic and comes to almost every meeting. And she's very busy with a lot of things going on, but she makes time to go to our meeting and to the South Chattanooga meeting. And I think there's a couple others. So it's a really good way to interface with city government. So I just want to put that plug in there for anybody who's like, what is a neighborhood association? Why should I be part of it?
We're not paying you for this information.
This is all me. This is just, I love them. I think every neighborhood should have one.
Right.
And I think there's just so much potential there.
Right.
And, I know I lived in Brainerd before, and they also had an active association, but it was much smaller. And so I think there's lots of different levels of potential and lots of ways to take advantage of this system to really make people feel, and not just make people feel, but to make people really be involved in the way the city runs. Yes. And so I really want to spend a lot of time on this because I think it's so important. And so I guess I'll just start with, how does a person find what neighborhood association they might be zoned for?
Sure.
I suppose.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, zoned for. So just to say the neighborhood associations are set by boundary. They go back, some of them go back pre-Chattanooga. So neighborhood services keeps the official map and boundary list and neighborhood association list as far as like who are the neighborhood associations. We don't necessarily keep, like for example, you mentioned St. Elmo, we don't keep your membership list, but you are registered with us as a neighborhood association. If that's to change, there's a process that's probably too tedious to talk about over a podcast, but it would essentially be through our office, neighborhood services, and you would have to reach out to one of our relationship specialists, and there was a process they can walk you through. Like we've had some neighborhood associations say, hey, we've got 20 people in this group and 10 in this group, and we'd like to merge together. And we can do things like that. We just need to make sure it's almost as very sensitive as like the council district. We would want to know like right where your council district is. And if that changes, a map has to be changed. And so your question to how do I find out who do I link up with? Right now, again, we'll talk in the future we have this magical new website. So the goal is to I can put my address in, and then it would populate my neighborhood association and the contact person, our staff person, but also the president of the association, and hopefully populate like where they meet, all this data points we want to really start using more heavily because we have an office of data engagement now with the city. So we can do some really cool things in that space. Currently, as we stand now, if you don't know and you can't just kind of organically find it through talking to a neighbor or something of that nature, the best way would be to contact our office and talk to a staff person who could look it up for you and connect you with that team. So that right now I would say if we don't have the new updated fancy kind of website driven version, calling our office so we can engage with you and we can feed that information to you is probably the best way to connect.
Okay, good. I'm glad you mentioned the idea of, maybe two small neighborhood associations want to merge. Because I remember I know the website is undergoing construction and things are always changing and moving around. But I remember a couple of years ago, they did have a map posted, and I was shocked at how small some of them were. And I was actually part of a very small neighborhood association.
They can be very small. I was shocked as well.
And I almost felt that it's harder to have a cohesive voice with a small association. It's harder to almost like throw your weight around. It's harder to get a city council member to come to a neighborhood association that maybe has 5 people in a meeting.
And that's where we use our neighborhood roundtables. So our roundtables are kind of an offshoot of the association. So you're in St. Elmo, for example, and I should have looked at the map already, but let's say there's 4 associations in the St. Elmo area. We have what we call a neighborhood roundtable where we ask the leaders of those associations to come to meetings. Right now, we're doing a series of kind of speaker series. I keep he keeps looking at my whiteboard. I'm sorry. I have this like massive whiteboard of stuff written behind me. So the neighborhood roundtables, the goal of that is to have a resource. So we've had like speakers like the chief has come, like kind of like you're doing with your podcast. Different department heads have come, but we also want people that come to that meeting to leave empowered with a tool. So that's kind of where then we can connect them with the city council person, and the city council person does want to come to those roundtables because it is a larger group of citizens and constituents. So that's kind of the neighborhood association, and then like the next level is the roundtables. And then the walk and talks kind of, it's and all of this is kind of, we're responding to COVID, and we're responding to people's concerns about, COVID safety and engaging, and everyone's kind of become introverted and doesn't want to necessarily go out to a public meeting and has gotten used to getting on a Zoom and being able to engage that way. So we want to respect some historical things that we've done, but we also want to look to the future and make sure that we're just engaging people at all levels. We have young people we talk to, we have older people, we have people like our age that are really savvy with technology, but also would maybe like to just go back to writing in notebooks and being a little bit more low key. We just want to make sure that we're meeting everybody's needs. That's our goal. Mayor Kelly's One Chattanooga plan is about, a thoughtful approach to what's going on with all Chattanoogans.
Right.
And we're part of that One Chattanooga plan.
And so if somebody is in an area where they either don't have a neighborhood association or their neighborhood association is inactive, what's kind of the process for either starting or restarting an association?
So I would be shocked if we find there's not anybody in your area. It may just be they're very low key. And that might be where we have to have a pretty open conversation with the people who are meeting, whatever they are, that we have other people interested in meeting, and we need to we're trying to get people to understand, just casually getting together at the coffee shop on Saturday, but you don't really advertise it and nobody knows how to connect with you, is not a neighborhood association meeting. It's a meeting of people, but it's not an official, we have to follow Tennessee Sunshine Law, we have to public notice meetings. So if we found you and you're in an area where there's no activity and you're interested, we would probably run you through what we call our neighborhood university, where we would train you on how to be a neighborhood activist, and we would connect you with our staff on finding other people and putting you all together, and we would kind of be your support system for creating a new association or taking an existing one that's fallen in disrepair and re-engage. And that's what we have staff members right now, that's what they're doing, is they're going out there and doing the field work, finding the people and putting them back together.
That sounds like a really interesting program, neighborhood university. So how is that program set up? How can you sign up? Who's it open to?
So we haven't had neighborhood university in a while. It's some previous administrations back. But it was essentially, as it kind of sounds like, it's a training ground for people like yourself or others who want to be interested in how to connect with city government. We run you through an official training academy. We have a speaker series. There's all kinds of variations of how it happened, and there's thoughts on how it should happen again. But essentially, it would be some kind of training academy where you go through a month-long, 6-week program where we train you on how to engage with citizens, how to engage with city government, how to engage with your council person, and you get a nice certificate. And then hopefully what we've done then is converted you into a neighborhood association member or a leader in an established neighborhood association so that you're leading the charge. So when we come and say, okay, Nathan, we know, and please no one quote me on any of this, because I do not know any about the operating budget. I try to stay very neutral. But if we know Mayor Kelly is very vested in parking lots, just pick something, parking lots, and we know in St. Elmo we need a parking lot because there's a church, we know there's a need, then we can go to you and say, okay, do you guys want to take this on? And if you do, then we can kind of, because you've been to neighborhood university, then we can then take you and say, okay, here's how to talk to Councilman Dotley, and here's how to get on the capital budget, and here's how to, make sure that they understand this is something the community needs, and our operating budget is performance-based, and, how to write a proposal to, it's kind of going towards city government without having to go get a planning degree or get, like some of us did. So what we want to do is just make sure people know how to connect. Either way. Right.
So I guess one last question, I'll kind of open it up and see if there's anything else you'd like to mention. But in general, is the Neighborhood Services Department somebody that any citizen could call and say, hey, I have a question about XYZ.
Yeah.
I don't know who to talk to. Please tell me who I should call.
Absolutely. In fact, I will give you a phone number to call. So if you want to just talk to us about anything, and really anything, because if it's not us, we know who it is to talk to, right? Because I worked in the planning office. I know public work. Like if it's not me, I'm okay with saying it's not me, but talk to this person and here's their phone number. But to call us, you would call us at 423-643-7300. To reach me directly, it's 643-7325. And then we'll call you back and, talk with you about whatever it is you need to talk about. And we'll connect you with the neighborhood association president. We'll connect you with, if it's public works, mayor's office, city council, we'll make those connections and follow them through. I would say the other thing about connection, we're relying on Chattanoogans to show up to these meetings and tell us what it is you need. Because the mayor, I can't say enough. It sounds like I'm like Tim Kelly is my best friend. I really do think Tim Kelly is one of the greatest mayors we've had. And I've lived a lot of places. He is genuinely concerned about citizens. And he wants to know what it is, but he can't be everywhere at all times, right? So this is probably one of the most, and I don't want to get too political, but progressive city governments we've had in a long time that genuinely they're concerned about what's going on out there in the world. And we have a lot of, Chattanooga citizens. We have tourists, right? We have people who've lived here forever. We have new people moving in here. We've had people that who just stop by sometimes and hey, it's kind of a cool place to ride my bike. We need to know what everybody is thinking about Chattanooga, but what Neighborhood Services really wants to know is the people have been living here forever. We want to keep them living here. But what is it that's causing them to not be happy? I know that sounds kind of Pollyannish, but that's what, I spend my entire day, whose problem can I solve today, right? That's what I'm here to do.
That's awesome. This is just such a valuable resource, being that point of connection between people and their government. because it is hard to get in the door and figure out who you need to talk to, and it just leads to that feeling of isolation and, oh, my government doesn't actually represent me. Well, you've got to be involved,
and it can
at some point, and it can be difficult to get involved,
right.
But having this doorway
right.
is really helpful.
And it can be very intimidating. Like, I mean, just as a citizen, it can be very intimidating to come to city council, right? To sit in that meeting, as open and engaging as they are, it's an intimidating meeting, right? It's intimidating. Like, I work in City Hall. Mayor Kelly's going to kill me when he hears that. Like, I don't like working in this building because I feel like nobody that I need to talk to comes here. That's why I'm always out in the community. Like, people will see me at Starbucks, or they'll see me at wherever I'm at. They're like, "Is she working?" Yes, I'm usually meeting with somebody because I try to engage with people where they are.
Mm-hmm.
I think I told you earlier, we're moving out to Eastgate. So we're making a campus out there. It's like a community resource center. The Family Justice Center will be the hub. The Eastgate Mall and all the community centers that are in the mall building will be part of it. But community development will be in the old VA clinic. And so all the things that we do, it's, transit accessible. Like, people can get to us. And we want to be somewhere where more people can access us as well.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else upcoming that you want to share, or anything that we've missed?
We have, like I said, we have our walk and talks. So our next one is going to be Glass Farms, October 9th. So we'll be posting on that on Nextdoor. So that will be with Councilman Coonrod. We are doing a community development summit in Eastdale to talk about how to engage that community. They have a lot of needs. We want to make sure that they know how to market their property if they're thinking about selling their property. We're going to be talking about the zoning code rewrite that's coming up. So there's a lot of city government that's being done that I'm not sure a lot of people know about that could have some really positive long-term effects on Chattanooga. So we're just hoping to be out there marketing those events, answering questions, and connecting people with resources that they might need.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thanks so much. Come anytime.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Chattanooga Civics. Our music was written and recorded by Kevin MacLeod. If you have any questions or feedback, please send me an email at chattanoogacivics@gmail.com. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram @chatcivics, or visit the website chattanoogacivics.com. Thanks for listening.